official title was Chaplain, but really my responsibility is just for care and welfare within the racing industry. I got into racing when I was about 15, 16. I was desperate to get out of school, and I didn't even know what job I was signing up for. And a week later I signed the Jockeys apprenticeship. And so on my first day of work, I had to mix up feeds. And then later on that night I couldn't breathe, and it turned out that I was allergic to horse food. When I was young, I had an infection. It got into my shoulder, and as a result I got one arm shorter than the other. So when I was riding horses, I kept kind of like, that didn't help me, and I was scared of horses. So I had 3 strikes, so I didn't have much going for me, but there was something about racing that I loved, and I think it's the people, it's the excitement of a race day. There's something for me about just setting foot on a racetrack that to me, it just feels like the most full of life place. In terms of the culture of racing, it's changed a lot over the years. Like when I was an apprentice, there was lots of opportunities to get into trouble if you wanted to. Lots of opportunity for addiction to kind of take root in my life during that time. There was a lot of freedom in that environment to be able to do that if I wanted to. And we realise now that we've got to be able to manage more than just horses. We've got to manage ourselves. I think racing comes with a lot of pressures, and we talk, don't we, in New Zealand about a culture of rugby, racing and beer. And I think particularly in the 80s and the 90s, those 3 things were very firmly bound together. My wife and I were Salvation Army officers. The first place that we got put as officers was in Foxton, which was the last place that I worked as an apprentice jockey. As is the nature of officership, you go around the pubs and collect. I noticed that I still knew a lot of the racing people in the pubs. So I'd gone through a lot of life changes, major life changes. And I look back at the kid that I was in those days with all those struggles, with all that baggage. And I thought to myself, would the me that I was then have been able to get any help? Like if I had wanted to make some changes, where would I have gone? What would I have done? And I thought, man, I'd love to be able to offer that. And so that idea was always just sitting in my head. It was something I prayed about and thought about, but I didn't know how it was going to look. And then before long, I noticed that I'd really reconnected with the racing guys again. We came back to Christchurch a few years later. And I was sitting in my office one day and just got that little God nudge to say, let's do this. So I called racing. I said, look, if you can give me an opportunity just to start basically being a chaplain at the local track. And so can you give me 6 months? And so we were really lucky that the Riccarton Racing Club, where we are here today, said, yeah, look, let's do this. When we first started, there was unsureness about my role because there'd never been anything like that before in racing. They were unknowing about what I was doing here. So it took time for people to sort of get to understand what chaplaincy was about and what it did. People embraced it really quickly, which is great. And we've been really fortunate that we've always been well supported by the higher bodies. They get what we're doing and it works in with what they want to achieve as well. But I think for a lot of people it was just trying to work out, because they knew me from the past. It was a bit of a shock because they kind of like, well, what are you doing now? And at that stage I was still, doing some ministry in church as well. And they're like, you're a minister. Like, we knew you and you were horrible. Like, we know what you were like. We went to the pub with you. And now here you are back and you're a minister. And it was a great opportunity to share my story, actually, to be able to share my faith story as well and talk about what had changed for me and how it had changed. But also there was a period where they're getting used to this new Andrew and what he does now. The change I see in culture now, particularly around the whole area of support and self-care, all that self-care would have been probably something you might have been mocked for back in the day because we needed to be hard, whereas now people aren't backward in coming forward. I think part of that has been as we've been able to introduce chaplaincy into racing, we've normalised that. But also I think society's changing in that way as well.
Every week he'd call me up and check up on me and say, hey, let's go for a coffee or let's go for something to eat and just chat. He said, you don't have to talk. It made me feel comfortable. It made me drop my guard and I can just talk about anything to him, and he's just, it's something that I think that this industry and most industries definitely need.
My daughter was in a riding accident. Andrew came to the hospital within the first 24 hours. He sat and spoke to my husband in the waiting room. It really helped Lincoln through that night, the time she was having her operation, and yeah, it's been a great support, and it's supported us ever since. You know, there's so much stress in this day and age that just to have someone to talk to, share with, listen, you know, and tell their story, and just that support, it's needed.
With jockeys, there are unique pressures for them. For a lot of them, there's a need to be light, obviously, so that can affect jockeys. Even right there, it's pretty tough when you've got to dump massive amounts of weight. That affects you mentally, affects you physically, so there's the danger and risk of the job. I mean, it's the only job in the world where you get followed at work in an ambulance. You know, you're literally not allowed to start a race without an ambulance being present. And it's pretty tough because jockeys do die. We see that, it's happened in my time, and you see how that impacts the whole industry. So things like that are pretty tough. Grief in general is one of those things that I think we're starting to learn about as an industry. We're aware that there's so much loss in this game, and so learning to deal with that, I think, is something that we're getting better with.
Racing is a single person sport. Even though you'll see a team field of horses racing, it is one person being the jockey, one person being the trainer, and they're responsible for the performance of that animal. It's not like having a team of 15 footballers with 7 reserves or whatever the situation might be, and you all sort of share the win-loss. So it can be a sport where there's a lot of pressure, particularly on young people. The role that Andrew's been able to bring is an understanding of the sport, the understanding of what the people in it face, the pressures, and you know, some of that can find its way in different means, whether it is turning to the booze or something like that. But I think bigger than that, he's just been able to help people with general life issues. He seems to have that little knack of just making people feel at ease, making them feel welcome. You know, funny little things like he wanders around on race day with a bag of lollies and gives people a chocolate bar. And he's been a really terrific go-to person. If you suddenly think someone's in a bit of strife or something, you can say, geez, that could be something Andrew might help with. And because I think he's had that role to play as an apprentice jockey, a lot of people have been very receptive to receiving a call from him. You know, just the fact that they know he's been through the mill, he's mucked out horses in the morning, he's wanted to be a top jockey and didn't make it as a top jockey. He understands what they're going through.
I'd had experiences that were common to a lot of people in racing, and having gone through those and come out the other side. So all of those things sort of helped me to sort of come full circle. So to be able to be back here now on a racetrack, after starting on a racetrack, but going through such a journey, to get back here, everything gets used. God wastes absolutely nothing.